Last day and last lecture, this is related to how to write and publish a good scientific paper. This lecture, it was not in schedule also, but we feel that this is needed, and because we all belong to some sort of academic background, we want to publish our research, even we want to go for patent also. So the things that we have to remember, that is essential for all of us. Many times what happens, that our paper quality is very good, material is very good, but still the paper is rejected. There are certain silly mistakes we commit normally, and for that, the paper is rejected. So we have to be careful while writing the research article, and this is going to ensure our publication. And this is, in fact, ultimate goal is our basically academic recognition in academic field. This is everybody we want. So related to this, this last lecture will be delivered by Professor Subhash Chandra Mukhopadhyay. I once again invite Professor Subhash sir to give his talk related to the paper publishing. Thanks. Thank you very much, sir.
The background of this seminar is that 2 years back, I went to Korea to give a keynote for a conference. And whenever I go to any country, I try to extend my stay a few days and try to visit a few universities. So, and I like to be hosted by them, not like I need to arrange my accommodation. So, in Korea, I visited one university called Korea University. That is one of the private universities, very big private university, I think more than 110 years old. So, when I sent you abstract, that you can select one of the abstracts for your students, they came back to me and asked that, would you be willing to give a talk how to write a technical paper? So of course, I mean, this is something which any researcher who writes paper can deliver. But he wanted that I should share my experience as editor. Because I am in the editorial board maybe total 25 years. If I add 3 transactions of IEEE Sensor Journal, IEEE transaction on instrument measurement, as well as IEEE transaction on mechatronics. So I prepared that seminar because of that Korea University. It took some time, but then after that I gave this seminar. This will be 28 times, and 10 countries. 10 not India is not included because India was already included last time. Last month I gave it to Life Matters. So it's the 10 countries I delivered 28 times, and it's actually quite useful. It's not that people who have already written paper, they don't need to know anything new, but still we do some mistakes, especially even like at my stage, I still get sometimes the paper get rejected because my student writes the paper and I don't give enough time to go through to edit it. So there are some silly mistakes happen and paper get rejected. As usual, when paper get rejected, you feel very sad, you get very angry and upset with the editor, and you try to sometimes write some long emails that the reviewer does not know anything what I have done. So that's our life. But at the end of the day, you are author, you are at the receiving end, you don't have any choice. You just need to accept it, the rejection. So if you see the statistically, I will not find a single case where authors are good and got the rejected paper as accepted. Okay, it never happened. And why it never happened? I will also tell the responsibility of the editor. So effectively, I think that it is not that I will teach you how to start from scratch writing a paper, because once you do master and then you start doing PhD, you will have that general knowledge and common things. But effectively, what I will share is that if you actually try to avoid a few things which will be helpful for the acceptance date. So that's the whole idea of this seminar. So I have already shared few things, but I'll just quickly go through. So I'll tell you a little bit of my career. You all know though IEEE activities, and then we'll go to the writing paper. So you have seen this one before? Did you? No? So that's my life in one slide. So you see this picture, and you may ask actually why I'm showing this picture. This is something unique you don't see very often. Can you tell me what is that?
Different.
So it's my family. So we are 4 people born in 4 different countries. Okay? So me India, my wife from Sri Lanka, my wife was born in Japan, and my son was born in New Zealand. Of course, they are not so small now. So my daughter is 15, going to be 16 next month, and my son going to be 12 next month. So I was born in 1965, and up to 1995 I lived in India. So I went to Japan in 1995, lived there up to 2000, and then I moved to New Zealand in the year 2000. Of course, if I come next year, you will find I have to add Australia. So I did my bachelor degree in, from Jabalpur, 1987, master from ISC Bangalore, 1989, and then I worked in Compton Dips for 2 years, the place called Kanjurmarg, Bhandup, many of you might know, and then came back to Jabalpur, and then while I was teaching as a lecturer, many of you do similar things. So I did not do PhD as a student, I was teaching as a lecturer and did the PhD, and that PhD I got in 1994. When I went to Japan, I did not have any plan to do PhD because it was a research post. And you don't know what is your, a place called Bhogitabba or something like that, your destiny. So we got married and then decided that better to be happy in a neutral country so that you don't blame your wife and wife don't blame you. So at that time I thought that if I get a PhD from Japan, that would be helpful. So in Japanese PhD we also write based on research. So that was in 2000. So I joined MSc in the year 2000. So in New Zealand situation is like that. It is not like professor, associate professor, assistant professor. It is lecturer, senior lecturer. Even within senior lecturer there are 2 ranges where you need to go through promotion. So when I joined, it was senior lecturer range 1. Then I got promotion to senior lecturer range 2, 2004. And then associate professor 2005. And then professor 2010. And then for IEEE, I became member as a free member. Sometimes you go to the IEEE conference, they give you free membership for that particular year. So that's what happened in 1997. But of course, then from next year onwards, you have to pay. So in 2002, once you become member for 2 years, you become senior member, you have to apply that. And then 2005, I became fellow of IEEE, which is now IET. And 2010, I became IEEE fellow. So IEEE senior member is relatively easy to achieve. So if you have some experience, 5-6 years, you need the support from 3 senior members. So if anybody, many of you came from as a faculty, if anybody would like to become, you are a member and become senior member, and you can always ask me, I'll be happy to be a referee. And of course, becoming IEEE fellow is a little bit complicated. It's not a little bit complicated, it's quite complicated. And of course, if in future, if any of you do well, please keep in touch. I'll be happy to support you because as I say, at the end of the day, you are my student because you have done this course. It's a paper, I have taught you a subject. It's not that I have given a seminar, okay? So you can deserve to get help from me. Okay, so in terms of the publications, our group, we always try to publish. My student, I aim, or any PhD student, I aim that 4 journal publications in a good journal. Most of the time IEEE transaction or IEEE journal, and then of course with time conference publication comes, because conference is always every year we go 1 or 2 places, so students get the opportunity. So around 7 to 8 conference paper comes as a part of their PhD, and also book chapter, they also write book chapter. So effectively when they finish PhD, altogether they have around 14 to 15 publications for a student in a 3.5 years time frame. So this is the publications from our group. In terms of the journal where we publish, because we work on censor, so censor journal comes as a first journal, but also many times you you don't actually work only on sensor. Sensor involve instrumentation, sensor also involve embedded processing and so on. So sometimes you also can think of. So in IEEE we publish over the years IEEE transaction instrument measurement, magnetics, industrial electronics, mechatronics, intelligent systems. Elsevier also sensors, actuators A, B, and measurement science technology, food engineering, because sometimes we develop sensor for food inspections. And we as intelligent systems, so you can also think of engineering application artificial systems. So there are other journals also, Sensor MDPI, you might have come across, that's the open access journal. They always charge a lot of money, but I don't pay a single cent for publication because I think I do research, I write the paper, I take all the hassle to send it to the publisher, and at the end if I pay money, it's not ethical for me to pay money for publication. So I have never ever paid any money for publication. But of course, sometimes you know that if your IEEE paper becomes more than 8 pages, there is a mandatory page charge. So sometimes we are in that trap. I have paid few times extra page charge because once it goes extra page, usually it's very hard to escape. And also IT. Okay, so in terms of my involvement with IEEE, I first time became member 1997 as a free membership for 1 year, and then of course it continued. And 2002, which is very important in my career, so I went to the sensor conference. That's the first time the sensor conference happened in Orlando, Florida, and I met a lot of people. Sometimes you need to meet people, okay? And you meet people like, not like Godfather, but sometimes somebody who can help you. That's really, really important in academic. So that part, as you see, GIAN is the networks. So networks is very important in life. If you don't know how to do networks, you don't expect that you get many things in your life. Okay? So if you work hard but don't do networking, whatever you achieve, if you work the same hard networking, you achieve a lot. So do networking, which is very important. So, and you should be ready to spend some of your time. Don't expect what I'm going to get now, because if you do, it's a balance in life. If you do hard work, definitely you are going to get. Okay? So that is very, very important in our life. So networking, so I come across some good people, and that really helped. So I became senior member, and because of my contact at that time, met some people. I was appointed associate editor of IEEE Sensor Journal 2002. So now I am one step higher in the IEEE Sensor Journal. So you can see now in 2016, we're continuing for the same journal. So I have edited more than 1,000 papers. Okay, so thousands of authors, out of them many got the rejection letter, and they're very angry and upset. But that's what happened. 2005, I started attending another conference for IMTC conference, Instrument Measurement Technology Conference. So like this year in May, the conference will be in Taiwan. I'm one of the technical program chair for that conference. So that conference, that society called Instrument Measurement Society. IEEE Sensor Conference organized by called IEEE Sensor Council. So that's a council, that's not a society. So in IEEE there are many categories, society, council. Society is much more powerful than council. So I almost attended all the conferences 2005 onwards for this society, except last year it was in Italy, I could not go, but otherwise I continuously attended this conference. So that's one of the things why you attend conference, I will tell, but most important thing that you meet people. So you don't expect that you get much from conference, but effectively you spend money to show your face to some people, and you also know them, and that actually helps. That actually helps in the networking. So otherwise email doesn't have much importance. And in 2006, actually I gave a tutorial for this conference, and that's the place actually I made Tarikul first time. So 2006 in Korea, Daegu. And then I was also administrative committee member for IEEE Sensor Council, representative IEEE Magnetic Society. And then 2010 I became fellow of IEEE, and 2012 I organized a special issue for IEEE Transaction on Mechatronics, and that actually helped me to become the technical editor of the IEEE Transaction on Mechatronics. So in terms of Sensor Council, I am not too much involved in the Sensor Council. I am involved in the Sensor Journal. Even though the council is the administrative body, but I don't involve too much time because I don't have good relationship with many people. sometimes I tell the truth and that doesn't go well. So appointed 2002, now I am a topical editor. So I have like around 10 associate editors who actually gets paper from me. I assign papers to them. Also I can act as associate editor. I do, but I also assign papers to them. And for my activities in IEEE Censor Journal, I actually recognized as the called best topical editor. We have 10 topical editors, so only they recognize only the best one. In fact, 2015 also I was the one, but things have become competitive. Okay, so when a paper comes to me, my duty is to assign it to an editor. I do it in 17.6 hours. 17.6 hours, not even a day. The second guy, in 2014, it was 3.7 days, but now in 2015, it becomes 1.1 day. So you can understand the competition is there for this recognition. So I have to be careful when I travel, because when I travel, I don't have internet access, so things doesn't happen very regularly. Also, I edited quite a few special issues: intelligent sensors, sensor system for structural health monitoring, cognitive sensor network, Internet of Things. That is 2013. Also, we have another special issue published last year that is called Sensor for Harsh Environment, wireless sensor for harsh environment. I organized a conference, which is Sensor Conference 2009, which was quite a big conference. We had almost 1160 papers submitted and 551 people attended in Christchurch. So unfortunately, the place where we organized the conference in 2011 earthquake, that is completely demolished. And I was a distinguished lecturer for the IEEE Censor Council, which is a good recognition, for 3 years between 2010 and 2013. In terms of involvement with IEEE Instrument and Measurement Society, so I started the conference 2005, and then I was appointed associate editor 2007. So as you can see, somebody wants to be associate editor, if you just sit in your office and write that, okay, I have done so much, unless you do really, really good work, okay, it's very difficult. So sometimes you go, know people, talk to them, that actually helps. So that's very important. Sometimes if you think that you want to contribute to the wider society, okay, not only just writing papers. So I have handled 250 papers, and also I reviewed 70 papers. I review a lot of papers, even though I'm very busy, but still I review a lot of papers. And then they award sometime outstanding edit associator, that was in 2010, also outstanding reviewer 2010, and also I got another A for 2012. I also got the course. Actually, the background of the course, if you remember very fast, I told that they gave some money to develop a paper. So that was in the form of recognition and also some money. So I was paid $10,000 US to develop the paper, so in terms of experimental stuff and other things. Currently, I chair one technical committee called IEEE IMS Technical Committee 18 on environmental measurement. And then the other transaction called IEEE Transaction on Mechatronics. So we have it 2005 in New Zealand, the conference called International Conference on Sensing Technology. So if you remember, I told you the first day that I like the word sensing. So you'll see wherever it is, sensing is there. So like my designation is Professor of Sensing Technology. So I like the term sensing very much. So we started in 2005. Then we also had in 2007 in New Zealand. When I did this conference, I thought it's one-off incident. Okay, I'll do one time, enough. But the very first time, we almost got 120 people attended the conference from 29 countries. And then I thought, oh, that's a good thing. So we thought of continuing. So in the beginning, we thought that we'll do it once in 2 years. So we did that, 2008, 7. And then what happened? Because 2009, I organized the big conference, IEEE Censor Conference. So we cannot have the 2009 this conference. So that happened a little bit. So 2008, I have a friend in Taiwan. So he told that he can organize it. So we went for 2008. And then because 2009, it's on in New Zealand, the big conference, we thought, again, next year, many people may not come. So we took to Italy 2010. Then we changed the thinking. Okay, so 2011, we did it in New Zealand. Then we thought, why don't we do 1 year in New Zealand, 1 year outside? Because by the time, the conference has already gathered some momentum and people shown interest. So 2012, we had it in Calcutta. Okay,
CDAC organized that conference in Kolkata. And then 2012 India, 2013 again in New Zealand, 2014 we had in UK, 2015 we had it in again New Zealand, 2016 this year we are going to have it in China. Okay, so it's in November 11 to 13. If anybody has got any interest to attend that, just let me know. I can send the call for papers. The papers public submission is in June. So it's in called Nanjing Southeast University in China, which is close to Shanghai. That's November 11, 12, 13 this year. And then next year it will be in Sydney, because I am moving to Sydney, so it will be in Sydney. So I don't know whether it will be any more in New Zealand, because if I leave New Zealand, maybe I don't know. And then I launched a journal. It's called International Journal on Smart Sensing, again Smart Sensing and Intelligent Systems. This is a free access journal, open access journal. So anybody can actually get the paper free of cost. So just check that one, www.s2is.org. This journal we publish relatively long paper. So relatively long paper. So the paper need to be a little bit long, not less normal short paper. And they have a format, so you can see the format. And we like to have some kind of experimental validation, okay, and also extensive literature review. So that's the main two criteria of having papers in the journal. So I always welcome you. If you want at some stage, you need to publish. And this is EI indexed. It's not impact factor. So we'll talk about impact factor later. We don't have impact factor yet. This is EI indexed, but it's becoming quite popular. So that's one option you can have. I also edit a book series with Springer Verlag, Smart Sensing and Intelligent System, which is actually my own series. I started in 2013. Okay, that series was not existing, and we have already 22 books under that series. So most of the books are edited by me, but there are also few books edited by others. But it's also a big business thing. So a lot of people always, like even whenever you organize a conference, you will find that you get invitation or email from somebody, can you actually publish your proceedings with us? So it's a business point of view, but we go for something which are relatively sensor area and which will be useful. It's very expensive to have in the library, especially in Indian universities, because one book may cost around 100, 120 euros. So which in Indian rupees quite a big. But if anybody is interested to get something, so like if you want to get the e-copy, okay, you can write to me. I can send you the e-copy, which may not be, you need not to pay. Okay, so with that background, so as you can see that I am involved with IEEE Sensor Journal from 2002, with IEEE Transaction on Instrument Measurement from 2007, and IEEE Transaction on Mechatronics 2012. So if you add them together, you will find that I am having more than 23 years of experience with IEEE journals as editor, which gives the opportunity to share with others what can go wrong in the publication process. Okay? So first question you ask that why do I need to publish, isn't it? Why do I need to publish? What can I do if I come to academics and do masters and PhD and don't publish? What happened to my career? So that's question you always ask, isn't it? And especially if something goes wrong, you actually get very angry with the supervisor that why the supervisor is unnecessarily forcing me to publish a paper, isn't it? So first question you always ask as a researcher, why do I need to publish? So the answer is that sometimes publication can be a prerequisite of getting your degree. Okay? In many universities, like my university, we do not have a requirement to have a publications for getting PhD degree. Okay? Maybe that's the case for many other universities in the world. But your supervisor is a strange person. Like as I said, that I told my student, very first day when I meet them, I give quite some time, I tell them, and then tell I am expecting you, when you finish your PhD, 4 journal paper and 7 to 8 conference paper. So supervisor is a strange person. He needs that publication. University doesn't need, isn't it? But it is not for the supervisor. Like at that stage of my life, I have got more than 450 items of publications in my career. I don't care whether it's become 451 or 452. You understand? But if you don't have anything, you get on publications. It's a huge change. You have only one, you become 1 to 2. It's a 100% change. For me, 450 to 451, 0.025%. You understand? So it is not for the supervisor, it's for you. It's for your career. So if you think of that your university has some kind of restriction, of course you need to. But even if your university does not have, if your thesis goes to an examiner outside, okay? If your thesis goes to an examiner outside, like I have already examined more than 50 theses and almost like 15, 20 from India. Like I'll be going today, Netaji Suhas Institute of Technology, this guy always sends his thesis to me, his students' thesis. I get thesis from IIT Madras, from IIC Bangalore, from IIT Kanpur, IIT Delhi. Now, I don't have time to read a 200-page thesis, okay? So in front of the mic record, I can tell that anybody, any examiner, if he says that he has read the thesis from page 1 to page 200, he is a perfect liar. He is a perfect liar. That's the definition I could give. Because if you read 200-page thesis, it will take more than 2 weeks. Okay? If you read very nicely, because you don't give full day in your office for the thesis. You come, students come, you go for tea, go for lunch, go for afternoon tea, and then you have got lots of other things. So you get only 1 hour to 1.5 hours for the thesis. So if you read the thesis fully, it will take 2 weeks. And you don't get anything for that, of course. Now IIC give me $200 US, so I get little money, but that money is nothing to me. So examiner don't go for the money, examiner go for helping the academics. So what I do, I quickly read the abstract, which is usually 4 or 5 pages, okay? I see the publications, what publication that guy has done. I try to get the publication from IEEE Explore or somewhere if my university have access, but sometimes my university does not subscribe everything. I can ask the examiner, not the student, because I cannot communicate with the student. I can ask the examiner, please send me his publication. So what I do, I read the publications. And not only all publications, I read the few best publications, maybe 1 or 2 publications which is in IEEE transaction. So I read that, based on that, I get the idea what this guy has done. And I write my comments. You understand? Now you may say that I do not do a proper job. Okay, fine, that's the way I work. And I don't have any other way to change myself at my stage of career. So you understand, this is the situation. So if you do not publish a paper and you send your thesis to examiner, what can happen? Of course, you may pass, but you don't expect that the examiner will give very good comments. So understand, so this is the situation that you need to publish for your degree, you need to publish for your job. Suppose 2 students applied for a job, lecturer position somewhere. Both has got PhD. Of course, if you have a PhD from Jamia, another from the MIT, forget it. MIT can be some family problem, he wants to come back. So there is no questions. Even the MIT without a publication, Jamia with 50 publication, MIT fellow will get a job. Understand? But if both the fellow are from Jamia, you have publications, your other competitor doesn't have publications, unless something under the table happen, okay, many times it happens, okay, but expect that is a fair situation. The fellow who has publications, he will get the job without any kind of consideration. Then if you have, both has got publications, you have got 10, another got 15, then number is not important, quality is important. So it's not only number, also you have to think of quality. Quality means what are the journals, they are known in the field as good journals, okay? So I'll talk about the impact factor. So even if you get a job, once you get a job, you don't start as a professor. You always start as either as a lecturer or assistant professor, and you have to get promotion. From assistant lecturer to associate professor to professor. In my university, there is another thing called distinguished professor. Of course, it's very, very hard because you need to know people, but professor is one of the things which is worldwide is the top post of university. So you always think of becoming a professor if you become an academic. So you need to publish, because at every stage, suppose you become associate professor, then if you apply professor, you may give your CV, but in the main applications, you have to write what did you achieve after you become associate professor. You understand? You may have a lot of publications that comes in your CV, which is appendix. But in the main applications, what did you achieve after you become associate professor? So it's important that you need to continue. Okay? So not only the publication, there are many other things, how much money you brought and this thing. So it's prerequisite for a job, main criteria for promotion, and tenure. Tenure means, like many universities, may not be in India, many universities like my university, the job once you get is called on probation. It's not a permanent job. And then after some time, 3 years or 5 years, it becomes permanent job. Okay, so that's called tenure. So once you become permanent, it's called your tenure. And in America, this is the compulsory way to go. So all go for tenure. And MIT, you know the MIT, very well known for their, MIT, what they do, they employ 4 faculty. They will tenure only 1. You understand? So 4 assistant professor, after 5 years, 1 will be associate professor as a tenure, 3 will be kicked out, but they all are happy, because if you work in MIT for 5 years, doesn't matter whether you get tenure or not, you get in Stanford or you get in Caltech. Okay? So that's the way things work. So you need to consider, when you do PhD, you need to consider publication very seriously. I always tell my students that very first paper, what I expect from them is to have a review paper. Why do I tell that? Because the students need to know, when they are doing research, they need to know what exactly they are doing. And if they do not have a very comprehensive understanding of the current state of the research, it's difficult for them to find a problem. So it's important that you should do a very good literature review. Now once you do a very good literature review, always you have to think of output. Okay? Always you have to think of output. Whatever you do, you need to think of output. So you need to get an output, and that output is getting in terms of a review paper. If you get a review paper, is always review paper gives you good citation. Okay? So think of reading something like 100, 120 papers from recent journals, last 5 to 6 years. Of course, you can go for a little bit old, because sometimes you have some good papers, little bit old. You always try to refer that. But last 5 to 6 years, that's the most important time, especially when you think of the sensor. When you think of the wireless sensor network, Internet of Things, if you do not study last 5 to 6 papers, you don't expect your papers will be published. I tell you one thing as an editor, before I send the paper to the reviewer, I check, is there any papers in 2016, 2015, 2014? If there is no papers from 2015, sometime 2016 is too early now, March, but if there is no papers from 2015, you don't expect I will send that paper to review. What I do, I review myself, reject the paper. I ask my friend, like Tariqul and others who are in the associate editor in the editorial board, that this paper doesn't qualify, please reject it. They reject it. My comment is, you did not do a comprehensive literature review. There is no paper from 2015 which we expect from you. Reject. Understand? So be careful. So when you actually write a paper, you must have some references from very recent times, 2015, 2014. Also, I will tell again, also you should give papers from the same journal. If you do not give any papers from the same journal, how do you know that your paper, your research, qualified for that journal? Isn't it? So you may happen that, oh, let's take a chance. Okay? So that doesn't work in life. Clear? So PhD is very, very important platform for somebody's life, especially those who are in academics. And this time you have to utilize as effectively as possible. So somebody, you will see, throughout your life, you do PhD at the age of 27, 28, 29, 30, depending on when you come to do PhD, and you live 70, 80 years. Throughout your life, you become doctor. Isn't it? I mean, after that, nobody tell you, mister. You get angry. You tell, I'm doctor, man. Okay? So you feel so much proud of that thing. Think of that achievement for that 3-4 years, that time, what you give for 3-4 years is really, really useful. Okay? So don't think that I'm giving extra time, because you are achieving something for your whole life. So it's very important. So review paper, also think of some citations. So I'll talk a little bit more. Also you should know in your area which are the journal are known as the best journal, and target that best journal in your PhD time, that I should have at least 1 or 2 papers. Like personally, I sometimes see a dream that I will have a paper in Nature. But anyway, so that's a different dream, okay? But that's not very easy for us. But at least you need to know what are the best journals in my area, and I should have at least 1 or 2 papers in that journal. So PhD, as I said, it should be a brand that, okay, I have done PhD in this particular area, which is something, I feel very much proud of. And also when you read journal papers, sometimes you may actually come across that, doesn't look right, isn't it? Sometimes you read a paper and you think, looks like something fishy, not correct. You can always communicate, okay? You can communicate with the editor. Communicate with the editor, not with the author. Because if you do author, they are actually sidelined. If you do with the editor, you actually can get some kind of recognition that if something is really wrong and its amendment is required, then that can come along with your name, okay? And that also you can actually write in your CV. You see, CV, like at this stage of my career, my CV is more than 100 pages. So I don't care. But you write a CV which is 2-3 pages. So you need some items which is be very, very useful, okay? So when it's building up, everything is useful in your life. Okay, so once you think of publications, you always get confused. Where should I publish my paper? Isn't it? So you have to get an outlet. So the outlet you have in front of you, you know that workshop, you know symposium, you know conference, you know then journal. Everybody has got its own definition, okay? So you go to a workshop. This is not a workshop, this is a paper, but you go sometimes a workshop, 2 days workshop, 3 days workshop, you go there, you listen, a lot of people comes, talk, that's all. You may get a book, nothing for you, just get a book, okay? So this is not something. Sometimes you can publish something, you can present something. Usually workshop also can publish a book, but that is not reviewed. That is not referred. That is not having any ISBN. Then go to the next stage, symposium, where the number of people little bit more. You may have a proceedings which may be referred, which may be having ISBN. You go to the next stage, which is called conference, which is slightly bigger. But workshop, symposium, conference papers are not very much having value in life. But it's important. It's important. Why it is important? Because you need to know people. You need to make yourself known to others. So that is important. Like here, if you see, it's not a workshop, but it's a subject, but at least few people from different places came. You know each other. You know who is working in what area. And that can make a networking. Will be very useful. I mean, we sometimes actually think most of the time that competition. But if you make the competition as a positive way, that can help a lot. Okay? Collaborations in a constructive way. So that can help a lot. So next one is the journal, which is the best, which is the recognized the best. So always think of the journal publication. Acceptance rate of the journal sometimes vary. Some journal you may have 20% acceptance rate, some journal 70-80% acceptance rate. So like Census Journal, we have around 40-50% acceptance rate. Okay? So journal usually doesn't publish all the paper. Next one, you think of subject. Of course, many times your subject is decided by your supervisor, but you sometimes also get the opportunity to decide your own topic. So you have to always think of what is my area. Is it a very narrow area, or is it a little bit wide area or big area? So for example, somebody working on electrical engineering, which is a vast thing, isn't it? Somebody then working on control engineering, slightly narrow, and somebody under control engineering working on modeling. Now why I am telling all this, you decide what type of conference you go. Suppose you are working in modeling and you are going to an electrical engineering conference. I have been once in Korea. There are 24 parallel sessions. And you will be surprised, I attended only one session which I chaired. Other session I was confused where to go. So better not to go. Just gossip with the friends and pass time. So that's what happened. If you go to a wide conference but you are working in a narrow field, you ended up nothing. So you have to be very selective. Which conference I should go so that I utilize maximum time. And then, of course, what type of conference? whether it's a regional conference, national conference, bilateral conference, international conference. So effectively, higher the order, the more the competitive. And the last one, what I say is for my philosophy, my students, what I tell them, I tell my students that in the very first year, or sometimes it doesn't happen in the first year, early part of the second year, they should go to an international conference, present a paper, attend the full conference, utilize the maximum time, meet people who are working in the similar area, and that conference paper, with the feedback of the other people, they can extend it as a journal paper. So that's the way I suggest to my students. Sometimes it happens, most of the time it happens, sometimes it doesn't happen, but that's the way I think that that's very, very helpful. Because once the student go to a conference, I have realized that once they are back, they quite different. Their exposure change, their mentality change, they feel very much, they are doing very good work. So it actually changed. And that excitation is very, very important in our life. Sometimes you need that inspiration. So you are working in an environment where every day is the boring day. So that boringness doesn't continue for long. So if you do not get inspiration, if you do not get excitations from the environment, it's very hard to continue. Ultimately we are human beings, isn't it? So that's the thing. So that's why I always think that head of the department has a huge responsibility. He has to excite, he has to inspire his staff. If he wants that his department will do very good. Otherwise, everybody will just come and job, come at 9, go at 5, most of the time doors are locked, nothing will happen. So that's why it's very, very important to get that external inspiration, external excitation. And if you could do that, then things do very good. And that's why I always tell my department, my colleague, that you always need to think of a supporting environment. Yeah? We are competitor, but at the end we have to support each other. Then only things will go up. So that's very important. Okay, next question is how do you actually work? Now it all depends on the problem, isn't it? Some people, they are actually focusing on the simulation. Some people focusing on the theoretical part, like if you say theoretical physicists. They don't care. They just bringing some new formula. It's really good. But we engineers, we actually don't do that, isn't it? I mean, you will find very rarely that engineers bringing some new theory. If they can bring, it's good. There is nothing that they cannot do that. But most of the time, we always try to do some experimental work. So theory, simulation, experimental work. So you will see that if we actually consider only simulation, the chances of paper getting accepted is very, very rare. Unless you bring a completely different level of simulation. You understand? I mean, I'm not telling that simulation paper all are rubbish. But simulation papers, usually editors and the reviewers think that can be manipulated in many different ways. So unless you validate with experiment, me as editor, very difficult to pass the gate. You understand? So whenever I get a paper, I quickly check whether experimental validation. Sometimes if I get paper from China, they say verification with simulation. Oh, okay, you can verify with simulation. So, but usually it's very, very hard. So simulation only will be very difficult. Now I understand many of you say that I don't have experimental setup. You have to think in a different way. How can you do experiment not very higher scale, but try to get some experiment, either taking help from some friend, some other institute, like you have all come here and you have seen the center nanostructure, especially for sensor area. That's a golden opportunity that you people got introduced with the facility Jamia has got, and it will be useful that you could utilize that. So think of that, without experimental validation, getting paper accepted is really, really difficult, sometimes impossible. So if you have both simulation, theory of course is important, because theory anyway, without theory you don't work. So theory is important, simulation, validation with experiment, chances of paper acceptance is very, very high. Okay, now many of you know when you publish, when you submit a paper, but many of you don't know how actually things work. So here I am telling you how the things work. So usually when you submit a paper, you submit through website, paper is submitted, everything is fine, that goes to the secretary of that journal. So every journal has got a secretary. Okay? You don't think that it goes to editor-in-chief directly. Of course, it may be that the same email goes to the editor-in-chief and the secretary. Now the secretary, in some journal, the editor-in-chief may not be acting directly. Secretary, what it does, when you submit the paper, you have to select some kind of called edX, which is basically the actual area of that papers, okay, or some keywords. Now based on that edX, there are, in censor journal, there are topical editors or there are editors. So they will decide who will be handling this paper. Sometimes editor-in-chief may be doing that job. Like I am involved with the IEEE transaction on instrument measurement, where editor-in-chief does that job. But in IEEE censor journal, secretary does that job. So it comes to the topical editor. For example, for censor journal, comes to the topical editor. Now as a topical editor, my responsibility is to find the associate editor. So I assign to associate editor. Now associate editor, as his responsibility is to find the reviewers. Now each journal has minimum review, so 2 or 3, usually 2, not 1, usually 2, sometimes 3, sometimes even more. So his job is to find the reviewer, so he invites the reviewer. And the reviewer job, of course, to review the paper. When the outcome of all the review comes to the associate editor, it depends on him what type of decision he will take, whether accept, major revision, minor revision, reject. Okay? Then it goes to the author again. Author gets the chance to address those issues, resubmit the paper. Editor decides whether he will send it to the reviewer again or he can take the decision based on the earlier decision. Then the paper is accepted or rejected. Once the paper is accepted, you get the notifications, you get some time that within few weeks you have to submit everything, source files. Once you do that, IEEE takes some time, make your paper, and it's called the proof. So you get the proof. You have to check the proof, everything is okay. Once you do that, then the paper will be accepted and it will be coming in the online. After a few more months, it will be coming in the printed form. So you can see from the submission to the publication, lots of process going on. As an author, you sometimes don't care to know because you want your paper to be published and printed as soon as possible. Sometimes we get mail from author, I have submitted, it's already 6 months. No, you people don't take any responsibility, blah, 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 blah. So when I was also author, was not involved as associate editor, I used to think of that way. But once I am in the system, I know how things work, you don't get angry and upset. So what happened? It's a long process. Currently, we have made the time very, very short. Earlier days, you used to, if you have somebody in your family or even with the teacher who are old, you can ask them during their time, how much was the time? It may take 3 years, but now it comes within everything within 1 year. If you are very unlucky, it go 1 year, few months, but it comes within 1 year. So this is the way things work, but conference completely different. You understand? So like for example, I am telling my ICST conference this year in China. It will be November 11, 12, 13. When you come to attend the conference on November 10, pre-conference gathering, you collect your conference back, where you get the CD, proceedings. It's already decided, isn't it? So that completely different way of work. But journal is another way of work. So it takes time. Now you will come across open access journal. Of course, I don't expect that from India you actually go for open access journal because MDPI censor, if you want to publish, they ask you 1750, which is a huge amount of money. You don't get scholarship that much in even 2 months. So usually open access journal publication from India is very, very hard because it's too expensive. But some people go for that. But consider open access journal is not very recognized because people think that you actually have given money for your publication. You understand? But open access journal get easy access for the authors. So they actually have the possibility of having more citation because people get free access. Okay? Okay, so one important thing for the journal publication is the citation and impact factor. You all know that impact factor, we consider that they decide what is the level of the journal. Unfortunately, that's not the case, but we consider that way. So I'll tell you how it is calculated. So citation is very important. if you actually follow somebody's paper, if you get some idea from somebody, the citation means that you are giving a reference, you are acknowledging him. That's the thing. If you do not do that, you are actually kind of a thief. You are stealing somebody from somebody's house without telling. Literally, it's called academic thief. Is you understand? So it's very important that you give references of that paper. So that is actually in the references comes. So when your paper is, you publish a paper, you give others name, others paper in the references, that's the citation you give. So that citation is very important for a paper and also for somebody's career. If you do something where you are taking something from somebody, you actually avoid the plagiarism if you give the citation. So the best way of avoiding the plagiarism is citing his paper. You understand? And you can actually copy directly 4 to 5 lines without any problem if you cite. If you don't do that, what happened? IEEE is when you submit a paper, IEEE immediately checks the paper. So IEEE has got a software called cross-check, and they have almost 6 billion papers in their repository, and they check and they come out with the Similarity Index. Okay? And if the Similarity Index is more than 20%, there is a high chance the paper will be rejected instantaneously. So you have to be very careful. So all the citation as well as the references you actually can get from the Scholar Google. So you can register there and you can see how your papers are read by others. Okay? So also you can see your H index, I will talk about that, and Iten index, and also your total citation. So this is done by Journal Citation Report of Thomson Reuters. So they are also a big business body, and they can do all the ranking of the journals. So there are many thousands of journals, more than like 25,000 or 26,000 journals. So they do ranking of that, but not all are engineering area. So the impact factor is one of the measure of the journal. So you all know that impact factor, isn't it? Any journal, people will ask, what is the impact factor of the journal? So impact factor is a measure of the journal. So how do we actually measure it? So it's a measure that how average article is referred by authors. So we can calculate the impact factor. Earlier days, impact factor was effectively 1 year impact factor. Now more important is 5 years impact factor. So still 1 year impact factor is valid. So how do we actually calculate the impact factor? So for example, we calculate the impact factor for the year 2012. Okay? So let us say we calculate the impact factor 2012. At the moment we can calculate 2014 because 2015 is still not complete. It will take some more time. So let us say we calculate for a particular year. In that particular year, how many papers that particular journal has published? Okay? That is one thing. How many papers that journal has published? And in that particular year, how many times those papers published in that particular journal were referred by others? Now it can be also self. Some people include the self citation, some people don't include that journal. So how many papers referred by others, cited by others, and how many papers published? So you take the ratio of the impact to get the impact factor. So impact factor is the ratio of 2 numbers. Similarly, if you go for 5 years, so consecutive 5 years, so you take all the numbers for 5 years. So in 5 years, how many papers published? In 5 years, how many citations? So citation divided by the paper published. Now this is impact factor. Now this is, B is a number, C is a number. So you are taking the ratio of 2 numbers, isn't it? You are taking the impact factor ratio of 2 numbers. Now how does it tell about the quality? Isn't it? Don't you think it's very funny that you are taking the ratio of 2 numbers and you are taking that number as the quality of the journal? So it is a completely wrong. That's why the person who actually developed the impact factor in around 1959-56, he sometimes write papers that I did not develop impact factor for academic corruption. You understand? It's a basically academic corruption. It does not tell anything about the quality. It's the quantitative measure of a journal. How can you say the quantitative measure will be as a qualitative measure? Then the qualitative measure should not there. Both should be one. But we always know qualitative measure, quantitative measure. So that's the funny thing. But unfortunately, you cannot do, because all the people at the top, they are very much biased and they continue that way. So you will suffer. As you cannot change the system, you have to follow the system. You understand? Otherwise you will be out. So that's not good for your career. So just, it's important to know, but at the same time, it's important to do what you need to do. Clear? Okay, so another thing is the very, very important now is called H index and Iten index. Sometimes some people, they feel very proud. Oh, this paper cited 1,000 times, okay, or 500 times. And he might have published one paper in his life. Unfortunately, H index does not take into account for that type of situation. So H index comes from here that if you have many papers published and you have got citation, if you plot them from the highest citation to lowest citation, and you can draw a square, a number of papers has got same number of citation. So H number of papers has minimum H number of citations. Then your H index is H. Okay? And that was given by Hertz. He was a scientist in University of California, San Diego. It's George H. Hertz. So that is now used very, very commonly. In my university, you will be surprised. In the appointment process, we check H index. Giving increment, we see H index. Giving promotion, from internal promotion, from associate to professor, senior lecturer to associate professor, we check H index. Of course, it doesn't mean that every time H index deciding factor, but it comes into discussion. And there is a common thing now that, okay, if you are actually qualified as a professor, you must have this much H index, okay, in the foreign country. So that's what's happening. So H index is very, very important at this stage. And then the next one is called Iten index, because H index at some stage does not grow so quickly. Okay, it just goes stagnant because your one paper is not getting that many citations. But then Iten index is that you have minimum 10 citations. So usually Iten index is much higher than the H index. So the plagiarism is very important. We have to be very, very careful, because these days internet sometimes kind of force you to do the plagiarism. You understand? So you check in the internet, you get something, oh, it's very nice way of writing, can I take it? And you take it and use it in your system, in your paper. You think that nobody knows, isn't it? Because I have done all in my office or in my house. You know, my house is a little small and I have got the computer in the corner. So nobody knows. But unfortunately, everybody knows because of internet. Because of Internet of Things, not Internet of the Internet. So just be careful, because whenever you submit the paper, IEEE use the software called cross-check. That has got 6 billion papers, and they check, and they come out with Similarity Index. I tell you one of my story. So because I am very much involved with China, and Chinese researcher, they always try to use me. Okay, so one paper, they put my name and they submitted, and I did not know that. Okay, immediately the editor-in-chief of Citizen Journal, he sent a mail, because he thought that actually it is not by me. Okay, so he immediately wrote a mail to me, Suhas, don't you think that that paper was not submitted by you? And it was Similarity Index 31%. Okay, so immediately I told them, withdraw the paper. I don't know who is it, but withdraw the paper. Make the story end. So just be careful, because Similarity Index is the factor which they say, which they check. And if the Similarity Index become more than 15 to 20%, then you cannot do anything. So Similarity Index comes whether your statement, line by line, is very similar or exactly similar to a other paper. Okay, so that's the plagiarism. Cross-check is just checking the similarity.
But can you use the software?
Yeah, you can use, but usually this is very expensive. IEEE has got the proprietary order. But in our institute, in our university, we use a software called Turnitin. So suppose any master student submit their thesis, PhD student submit their thesis, we use Turnitin before they actually submit. Okay, because we always think, sometimes it happens, master student, PhD student, PhD student usually not much. master student, they sometimes do. So we always check before they can submit. So just be careful that why, and also IEEE, you see this one, we get monthly email from the IEEE intellectual property with a list, 550 people. They were banned from submission of papers to IEEE. Somebody 1 year, somebody 2 years, somebody 5 years, somebody 10 years. We get that, and they told keep it in a safe thing and check whether those authors submit paper. So be careful that if something happen, I mean sometimes you are in a situation, I'm not telling that you are dishonest, but sometimes we are in a situation we do. Okay, I also did something when wrong, some mistakes, some wrong things, which later on I realized I should not have done. But it happens in life, we do mistakes. What is very important is to rectify that mistake as soon as possible and go forward. So that's the important thing, just be careful. Okay, so after all this background, most important thing is that to write a paper, you have to follow some kind of method. Okay, of course, your research is very, very important. If your research is not good, then of course you don't expect that you write a very good paper. Now, what I tell my students, that you do the research planning that you could write a paper. Then it actually helps a lot. So you need to have a good plan. So whenever we think of a plan, that means basically we have some kind of hypothesis with us. That's the theory we talk about. Without theory, nothing works in life. So that's the plan, hypothesis. And you always ask some key questions. What exactly I'm going to do? Okay? What this result mean to me? Okay? Is it something which I can actually publish? Now, if you have that questions in mind, you will see that you are working in a different domain. Okay? So I always tell my students, think of a publication, then do the work. But most of the people, they actually do other way around. They do some work, and after that they think, can I actually have a paper? And they are quite confused because they actually don't know. They got a lot of result, but they don't know what they can actually publish. You understand? So I come from the other way. Think of the paper that, okay, I can actually publish a paper in this area. Now, if I want to publish a paper, what I need to do? So if you do that, then you can do the experiment for that, collect your data, you get the result. When you get the result, most important thing that are you getting consistent result? On a very sunny day, you may get good result because your instrument decided to, make a trick to you. You understand? So you must do some checking that am I getting the consistent result? You know what is happening now? There is a committee. There is a committee. They are actually verifying that all the results which are reported, are they true? And you will be surprised, only 11% are true. You understand? We have so many millions of publications, but only 11% are true. And if you remember, 2 years back, one Korean scientist, they lost their whole job and group because they were publishing something in Nature, which realized that later on that actually not correct. So it's very important that how do you say yourself that I'm actually doing good work. So consistency is very important. You should get the same result day in, day out. Those who are working on sensor, the temperature and humidity, that cannot give you the repetitive result. So you have to think of that environment, what you are working on. Within the control environment, you have to see the repeated result. And if the temperature will change, definitely the result will be different. So that's the most important thing, that your result is consistent and reproducible. Then if you have that, you can analyze the data and you can have your figures and tables. When you have the figures and tables, have proper caption and you outline the draft of the paper. You understand? Now, I always tell my students, don't think of the introduction, don't think of the other things. Most important thing is your result. If you get the result, put the result in the paper and you see that half of the paper is done. Each result you can analyze, you can statement, you can describe what is that, how it is that, and so on. You see half of the paper is done. Then you can find a good title, few lines of abstract, which I can always help. Conclusion, 8 to 10 lines, which I can always help. Proper references. Once you have the references, your introduction part becomes very simple because you are just basically talking about the references. So paper writing is not that you have to start from the title and go to the references. It's a different way of writing the papers which you could do very easily. Okay, so Once you have all the draft, don't be hurry to submit the paper, because if you take some time at that stage, you can avoid that paper will be not easily rejected. So you have to compose your message. What is the message? What exactly the editor and the reviewer they would like to see from your paper is that, have you done something which somebody has done 10 years, 20 years back? Okay? That's the thing is most important. That what is new, what is novel, what you want to share with fellow colleagues, that is, I am doing something new. That's the most important thing. So when you say, actually I am doing something because I am doing it the first time, that's a new to me. Of course it's a new to you because you are learning, but you don't qualify yourself to write a new paper. There is no need of a new paper because already that paper existing. Yeah. So that's the message. What was not known and is now known to you and others. You write a thesis, master thesis, PhD thesis. Your paper is not a thesis. Paper is the concise form of the good result which you are sharing with others. So it's completely different. It's the short form. So you have to formulate one sentence as a position statement. Suppose somebody is doing PhD, I ask him, can you tell me within 2-3 minutes what you are doing? You should be prepared. And if you start talking about something, blah, 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 by the time you tell, I lose interest, it doesn't help. You understand? So those are the things you need to have those quality. So I always tell my students that PhD is a training. And you have to acquire some ability in this time so that you can take it forward. You have got your supervisor during your PhD time. Once you finish, you join as assistant professor, you are on your own. So if you do not actually learn those steps while you are doing PhD, it's very hard for you to go forward. So that's the important thing. So one thing we call we tell it called RICE test. Okay, RICE test comes from R is the rigor, I is the interesting, C is the contribution, E is the exposition. So effectively, when you publish a paper, you should be writing something that it becomes interesting to the reader, and the reader will get something new or novel, and something in a way it can be easily understandable. So I always tell that, if you could write a paper like the way J.K. Rowling writes the Harry Potter book. Okay? Harry Potter book, when I see the size of the book, I lose interest of reading. My daughter, 800, 900 pages book, likes to finish it. Forget about the food. I want to finish this book. I don't know. I have never read any Harry Potter book because I am too old maybe. But I have heard that they are so exciting that you want to finish that book. Of course, not everybody become Rowling, isn't it? But if you could get some parts of that, make the paper that way, you are ahead of others. So what are the few rules we need to follow? We need to follow some rules in order that paper will not be rejected very easily. First thing you have to do that your research, your outcome should actually match with the theme of the journal where you want to submit your paper. If you want to submit your paper IEEE Censor Journal, you must work in the area of censor. Okay? Sometimes we get papers completely different area and it's very difficult to go forward. So paper may get rejected. So you have to read some paper published in the journal. So if you think of IEEE Censor Journal, read some papers published in IEEE Censor Journal. Check yourself, am I fitting there? My work is fitting there? Yes? Then go for that. And you be ready that you add those papers which you have read in the references. You should also get the draft of that journal. So they always have the guidelines, how can you write the paper, get that draft. So the template, you must follow the template. If you do not follow the template of the journal, okay, usually me as editor, my first impression will be that you actually submitted this paper to some other journal and you actually got rejected, and you are trying without any more work, you are trying, taking a chance. Understand? And others are not fool. So if you become smart, others are smarter, isn't it? So just be careful that editor immediately can reject the paper without any questions. He will say this paper was submitted somewhere else because it does not follow the style of the format of our journal, so paper is not suitable. So just be careful, take little bit time. I am not telling that you all do, I am just telling that this can happen. Many people actually follow that. So template of the journal is very important. How you write the style. IEEE has one type of style, Elsevier has another type of style, so you have to follow the style, the way references are written. Very important. Again, it might come from other way. And make sure the title. Title is very important because sometimes I tell you, at this stage of my career, I decided that I will not review any more paper. Enough is enough because I have reviewed more than 2,500 papers in my life. So I have done enough. I don't want to do. But then when I get invitation, I get a title. Oh, okay, looks very interesting. Okay, I accept it. So you understand. So when the title is something quite exciting, you actually bias. You actually bias the reviewer. Reviewer already, no, it will be interesting. So very, very important to have a good title. And the next thing is the abstract. One of the things I tell you, every reviewer read the abstract. Okay? Personally for me, I read the abstract, I read the conclusion, I check the references, and I see the result in the form of graphs. Okay? What is the result? I don't read anything else. Usually. But it's not that that's my general rule. Sometimes I'm traveling, I have got printout and I kill my time, then I go through. Some papers very close to our work, that's an opportunity for me to know what they have done. Can you do the same thing? So if I don't have time, I ask my students to come and ask him to read the paper because that's very important for our work. So you sometimes get ideas and that's what you need to know. So abstract, you write 8 to 10 lines. You have to be very careful to give extra time for that abstract because usually everybody reads the abstract. And you can win if you actually are successful in writing a few lines, very exciting. So you always ask, who actually read my paper? Isn't it? Once it is published, available in the public domain, everyone who has interest in your area, they read your paper. But that is after 1.5 years, isn't it? When you submit your paper, you think that editor will read your paper. If editor is busy, he reads the title and abstract. He submits it to the reviewer. Reviewer will definitely read your paper. Of course, sometimes you will find that some reviewer, they actually don't read. And that's what authors say, the reviewer doesn't know. But we, editor, cannot do anything. So the editor and reviewer, they are the first people who read your paper. That's not published yet, isn't it? Then they decide that's published, then the other scientists, professional, students, they have the access of the published paper, they read your paper. So one thing you have to understand, when you are expecting that the editor and reviewer, they must read your paper, you have to understand they are busy people, isn't it? They are busy people. And they are doing the job voluntarily. They don't get any money or any payment for that. So they are actually helping you. They are actually helping you, isn't it? I mean, they are not supposed to do that, but they are doing because they want to help you. So you should not be angry with them. You should be happy that they are giving you feedback to improve your work, to improve your career, isn't it? So that's the fundamental thing. So they are having very little time. So if you want to use their time, you should think of the writing a paper in such a way that they actually very easily read that. So reading clear and concise article is easy. Sometimes you start reading something, after some time you lose interest, isn't it? Because you find, what is written, I don't go for a cup of tea, and then you come back, you lose interest, you don't read. So that's very important, that if you can write that way, generates the interest, you can actually win him. So what you can do to avoid some of the things? First thing what you need to follow is to avoid writing long, complicated sentence. Don't think that if I write a short sentence, it's bad. It's actually very, very good. Because you are writing scientific article. You are not writing a report on sociology or on history. You understand? Or on English subject that you have to use bombastic word. You are writing a technical report. So you write small sentence. Avoid pretentious language. Pretentious language means you are not making it very clearly. Avoid repetition. Okay. Sometimes you write the same thing and then after some time you again written the same thing. Reviewer, they remember those things. Oh, you have written this thing again, and get upset and angry and reject. Meaningless phrase. Sometimes you use some phrase which is meaningless. Irrelevant material. It may not be related to your research, but you write there. Cluttering a paragraph. So sometimes you started a paragraph and then you change to something else. Okay. And citing too many references, especially from conference paper. If you want to publish in journal, it's very important that you have to avoid that. So some meaningless phrase which you can see. Another important thing, you don't go for the active voice. So avoid I have done, we have done, so many things. Like go for passive voice. Okay. I'm not telling that if you do that, your paper will be accepted. But if you do that, there is a high chance the paper will be rejected.